Hello and welcome to Teching with Turtle. Today we're going to be going over a basic computer build. Putting together what you see right here. Just a very basic computer, but let's get down to it. Alright, so first off, let's go over the parts we'll be using. This is the Gigabyte AB350 Gaming 3 motherboard, AM4 socket. The B350 chipset's a little old at this point, but it'll serve perfectly for today's build. Obviously, get a better one if you can. The cooling bracket's already installed as it'll match up with my cooler. Yours may be different. Also very nice on this board is it does come with 4 slots for RAM, for sort of dual channel memory, an I/O shield, and a little holder for your front panel power pins. Also, I'm using a PCI 1X Wi-Fi card, a LIPA Exclusion 240mm AIO, a TX850 Corsair power supply, a 150 watt, a Gigabyte RTX 2060 Super for the video card, a little overkill, I guess, it's a little expensive. Plenty of hard drives, different styles, just so you can kind of see what styles they fit. Ballistics DDR4 2400 megahertz RAM, a little slow for the processor we'll be using today, which is the Ryzen 5 2600X. It's a nice little chip, multi-purpose for productivity and gaming. Also, be careful with those back pins, you don't want to bend them. The case we'll be using is the Corsair Carbide 275R. It's not the greatest airflow case, but it did come with an included rear exhaust fan and front intake fan, which is kind of nice of them. And also, it's got this very nice little power supply shroud on the bottom, which will keep everything looking nice and tidy. But yes, this is basically everything we'll be using for this build. Alright, so let's move on to the next build. I'll put the parts lists up here for you all to see. Okay, so first we'll be installing the CPU. Raise the retention arm first so you can loosen the socket up to be able to insert the CPU. Be careful when you pick up your CPU, and also remember to line up the gold arrow on the CPU with the triangle or arrow on your motherboard. It's sometimes a little hard to see, as I don't know if you can focus in on it, but when you do put in your CPU, be sure to just drop it in gently. Give it a little wiggle to make sure it's fully seated, and pull down the retention arm to secure it into place. Next, we'll be installing the RAM. You'll notice that there's a little notch here. It's a little offset, so it'll help you install it the right way. For this motherboard, I did a little research, of course, and know that the 2 and 4 slots are going to be the ones I'll be using, so I'll go ahead and put up the pins, the retentions on the other 2 slots. And when you're sliding in your RAM, be sure to press down firmly and press down, I'll line it up here, until you hear a solid click. And then same thing for the second RAM stick, and push down until you hear the solid click. For storage, we'll be installing a NVMe drive here. As you'll notice, it's got a little standoff with different measurements depending on how long your NVMe drive is, or your M.2 drive. And so this one's already in the right place, so let's go ahead and get this installed. Remove the screw from the standoff. Slowly insert the M.2 drive. You'll notice it'll kind of spring up at an angle. Gently hold it down and screw in the screw back into the standoff. You don't have to go too tight. For thermal paste, we're using the GD9500, and all you need to do is put it right in the center of the CPU, and just a little pea-sized amount is more than enough. Next, we'll be putting on the cooling solution. It's a pump reservoir combo. I start the screw a little bit here, and remember, when you're installing this cooler, you want to make sure that you put even pressure, so make sure you alternate on your screws. This only has 2 screws, some of them come with 4, so just kind of crisscross pattern or back and forth as with this one with 2 screws, and make sure it's nice and snug. They usually have a little bit of a spring in there to keep you from over tightening it, but yeah, once it's all nice and secure, we're good to go. Go ahead and remove the glass panel from the case. Yours may not have a glass panel. It may be different. It may just slide off. But this one has got 4 thumb screws you remove, and carefully pull the glass off and put it somewhere safe so you don't break it. And then we're going to go ahead and install the I/O shield. Turtle side note. Not all motherboards come with a separate I/O. Some of motherboards, like this Aorus B450 motherboard, comes with a pre-built-in I/O shield. I've had many freakouts trying to find the I/O shield only to find out that it's already installed on the back of the board, so don't feel upset if it happens to you. What is this whole I/O thing? I/O just means input-output, and it refers to all the plugs and ports on the back of your PC. There's also front I/O, which is available in the front of the case, but it doesn't apply to every single case, as some cases have no front I/O and they rely entirely on the back I/O. So, the more you know. So for the I/O, you're going to want to push evenly top and bottom in the existing hole in the back of your case. Sometimes it does take a little force to push in there. Do not worry. Once it lines up, you'll hear it snap into place, and you'll be ready to go. Next, we'll be installing the PSU. As you notice on this case, there's a little filter on the bottom, so we'll be placing the fan facing down. Just go ahead and slide it in the case, and just be careful with the cables. And line up these screw holes with the mounting holes that are on the case. Go ahead and screw the screws in. I like to slide one in first just to kind of get it into place and not really tighten things until things are all lined up. Also, just good practice with everything. Try to cross screw everything. Make sure that it's nice and even pressure so it mounts nice and straight. And also should help with vibration issues, and just keep the noise level down on the case. And once you're all tightened down and secure, we'll move on to the next step. Next, we're going to be removing the back panel. Didn't show that on camera, but as you can see, this has got a couple little holes here for the power supply cables. The 8-pin will go to this top one. I like to put them in beforehand because sometimes it's a little hard to get to them. Also, give yourself plenty of slack just to make sure that you're going to be able to reach the motherboard. This is the USB 3.0 plug, and these are the front headers. And also the HD audio header that'll be plugging in the motherboard. You slide these in just carefully. Just give yourself a little bit of slack again. Same thing with the USB 3.0 and the front power connectors as well. I'm going to push these through this little rubber grommet here just to make sure we have plenty of space to work with. Next, go ahead and drop in your motherboard. Slide it in. Some motherboard trays and PC cases have a little standoff in the center that allows you to line it up. I'm holding the motherboard by the cooler. It's perfectly safe to do so. Move any cables so you have a nice flat mounting surface. And you'll notice once it goes in, it kind of settles into place and the motherboard just sits. Go ahead and screw in the motherboard screws. You'll find there's quite a few of them, which I'll be pointing out on the video here. Also, once this is done, go ahead and plug in the front header and USB 3.0 plugs. The little bracket, again, going to be very handy here to slide this in and make it super simple. Next, plug in the HD audio. You'll notice that the HD audio can only go in one way. It's got one missing plug. And just slide that in firmly. Don't press too hard. There's really no need to too much force. Next, I'm going to be plugging in the 24-pin power cable for the motherboard. You'll notice there's a little too much flex there. Unfortunately, this motherboard didn't have a standoff at the edge of the PC case. Plug in your 8-pin CPU power connector next. They'll only go in one way, so it's kind of hard to screw that up. And click that in securely. You'll notice that there's two headers, one for CPU fan and for a CPU option/pump. This is a pump reservoir combo, so we're going to be plugging this into the pump header. Next, I'm going to be passing through the cables for the AIO radiator, just so that they're nice and tidy, and just passing through this little slot here to get ready to mount the radiator and just slide it into place. We're mounting this on the top as it doesn't have enough space in the front. Go ahead and start screwing in a few screws. The nice thing about this is just put a couple in there so it'll hold it in place, and don't really tighten anything down until you've gotten all your screws in, just in case you need to adjust the radiator to make sure it fits perfectly. There's not any kinks in your tubing, and again, same thing, make sure to cross hatch tighten everything, just cross tighten everything so it's nice and secure once you have it in the right location. And it's lovely when you can hit the screw in the slot every time and have no issues. And again, I can't really stress the importance of cross-tightening everything. And yeah, once everything feels nice and tight and Next, we'll be putting the hard drives into these little toolless caddies, and also the 2.5-inch drive that was in the front of the beginning of the video. Here, it's a little 1 terabyte drive. It's got a nice little thumb screw to tighten things in. Make sure you mount it on the bracket first. These nice little caddies are nice because you can just slide them in once the hard drives are in. And as you can see here, super easy to just push in and you're set. Next, I'll be plugging in the SATA power cables for all the hard drives. Again, depending on how your case is and how much space you have for cable management, these steps may be in a different order, but the process is basically the same. Next, I'll be plugging in the SATA cables to the motherboard. Passing them through this little rubber grommet. Since we do have 3 drives, I'll be able to go pass all 3 SATA cables through. And also a little note here, sometimes you have to read your motherboard manual, as when this build will have an NVMe drive, it may disable some of the SATA ports on the motherboard. So be sure to read the manual and figure out which ones will be inactive. Next, we're going to go ahead and plug in the SATA ports to the hard drives. Trying to route them accordingly to make sure that cable management later will be easier. Make sure you just plug them in. Again, they're L-shaped little plugs, so it's kind of hard to plug it in the wrong way. It won't go in unless it's properly lined up. All right, let's push those out of the way. Next, we'll be passing through the PCIe power cable through the rubber grommet on the case. Once that's through, you can go ahead and install the video card. The PCI slot on the top is usually the favored one just because it's got the most PCIe lanes. Another Turtle side note. You'll notice that I added a PCI 1X card for my Wi-Fi. Again, not all PCs need a Wi-Fi card. Some motherboards, referring back to my friend the Gigabyte Aorus B450, has pre-built-in Wi-Fi to the board. This usually makes the boards a little more expensive, but the convenience of having all your PCI slots available is definitely something to consider. Now back to the build. And once you've installed your PCI cards, you go ahead and tighten them down with the brackets on the case. 2 screws for the video card, 1 for the Wi-Fi card. You can also use a USB Wi-Fi adapter. I just went for the PCI slot for the speed. Go ahead and plug in your PCIe power cable to the video card, and you're set. Well, there you have it, folks. You've built yourself a computer. Now remember to go ahead and add a like down there if you liked the video, a dislike if you did not like the video, and so please subscribe and make sure you set out notifications, and stay tuned for the next one where we'll be doing some cable management, and we'll also be doing some water cooling for this system. So if you like what you see, please remember to come back. Thank you and have a great day, guys.